We are live here on Soulfire. My name is Christopher. I'm the AstroMedium, and welcome to the Chronicles of Chiron, the Lion, the Witch, and the Healer. I am by myself tonight. My counterpart, Jessica, could not make it, but that's okay. I've got a lot of topics to cover, and I've got a lot to say about it. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about Chiron right now. Of course, this is the Chronicles of Chiron. And what the hell is Chiron anyway? So Chiron is a myth, and there is an asteroid, a half asteroid, half comet actually, in the center or in the middle of the orbit of Saturn and Uranus that we lovingly call Chiron because of its energy. And this half asteroid, half comet is named after the myth of the half man, half horse, Chiron, who was a wounded healer. So it is an archetype. It's an energy that calls you to transmute your pain into power. It's an energy that pushes you to see your weaknesses, insecurities, your primal wound as a strength to heal others. And Chiron is currently very active right now as he's receiving a supportive sextile from Saturn. And this is very important right now in our world right now because Saturn and Uranus are really going to take center stage this year, and underneath that main frequency that will play out, that main energy that's going to really culminate in being the overall arcing theme of 2021, Chiron is also there to help us heal in very structured, disciplined, and real ways this year. And Chiron energy, you can look in your chart at your Chiron sign and house placement to see your primal wound, what you came in, what was attracting a lot of the traumas, insecurities, a lot of the weakening experiences that you had that you have to overcome, transmute, and move through. And Chiron also shows us how you can heal others. It reveals a lot of special talents and gifts as well. So tonight, in the name of healing, we're going to talk about that are very near and dear to my heart, plant medicine. And we've talked about that on Chronicles of Chiron quite a bit, as Jessica and I are very familiar with this. So I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail on two of them that have reached the world stage, and a lot of people are talking about them. And I'm going to talk about a few other different plant medicine, and I also like to call it plant spirit medicine, because these plants have a spirit. Rochelle says, hi, handsome. Hello, Rochelle. Love you for that. But hello, I hope you're doing well. But plant spirit medicine is really the term that I want to use, and I don't use that lightly, and I have my own experience to truly understand. Of course, I believe that plants have soul energy or life force energy in them, but to work with with a plant medicine spirit, that was something that I didn't take so literally until I had my own experience with it, and I'll go into some detail about that, okay? So first of all, what is plant medicine? Well, all plants can be medicinal in certain ways. There are some plants we don't vibe with, a lot of plants, most that we do. Whether you're eating it, smoking it, ingesting it, taking it as a tincture, it doesn't matter. Plants are full of life force energy. They prana, chi. They offer all types of benefits, whether it's from vitamins, minerals, chlorophyll that cleans our blood. There's so many benefits to plants, but plant medicine, in the way I'm talking about it, is taking it a step further and going into extracts, roots, vines, leaves, flowers that have specific, not just life force and spirit in them, but specific chemical compounds that induce altered states of consciousness. And this is really hot in the world right now. People are talking about this. Lots of documentaries. Chelsea Handler had one that a lot of people were talking about, a special on Netflix, Chelsea Does Drugs, and in that she did ayahuasca. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. My first experience with plant medicine was several years ago. I could say that my first experience with plant medicine was taking herbs when I was a little kid, you know, in capsules and things like that, whether it be turmeric or taking, or all of that can be considered plant medicine. But my true first experience with plant medicine was around 18, 19 years old when I started smoking weed, okay? Which marijuana, being a fourth dimensional plant, has a lot of healing benefits, but it is not a vibrational match to everybody, and it is not something that I partake in very often to this day. And it also has its own benefits to the body, mind, spirit, all of that. Tobacco, you could even consider a plant medicine. It's been used in native, all kinds of cultures as part of ceremony and rituals, and that's because these plants offer some type of connection with some other lineage, some other dimension, and some other state of being. So really, in the way that I'm talking about, I kind of got into this a few, probably 6, 7 years ago when I started to hear about things like ayahuasca, and I would hear people talking about tripping out on mushrooms and doing LSD and dropping acid. I guess do you say dropping acid? I don't know. Never done acid, but and I'm okay to talk about drugs on here. I don't care. But I prefer plants. I am vegan after all. But for me, plants have always called me, and it makes me more comfortable, and it makes me feel like there's an experience that will be had that is a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more in tune or connected. And I am a highly sensitive empath, so I have to be careful about the chemical compounds. Even if they come from a plant that I put in my body, I will respond more aggressively to them. So especially even things like caffeine, coffee, things like that bother me. So I have to be careful. And so I was always weary of things like that. But I was very drawn to the idea of peyote and rooms and things like that. And it was something that I wanted to do to induce a different business. But for me, I didn't just want to get fucked up. I wanted to connect. I wanted to pull in otherworldly information. I've always been very spiritual and drawn to that, obviously. Of course, it landed me here and led me here. But for me, to venture off into that world, I wanted to do it with friends, and I wanted it to be a safe experience, but be meaningful, and for it to be inspiring, and for it to open something up. That was what drew me to it, not just so I could see what it looked like, okay? Although, of course, I was curious. And so I did partake in mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms. That's my first experience with a hallucinogen. And my first two experiences with that were beautiful, especially the first one. I was with two friends, and it was amazing experience for me. I felt connected. I did about I don't even know if I should talk about all the grams and everything. I have to be careful, but I did about 3 grams of it. I guess I don't give a shit. I did about 3 grams, and that was good. It made me feel light. It made me feel buzzy. It made me feel warm, and it connected me to something. I could feel something there that I was channeling. It was very interesting, very artistic experience as well. I knew things about people in the room. Of course, I've always been a psychic medium. I just didn't really know it or admit it to myself. So it definitely heightened that, I think, or at least just like alcohol and weed did, it lowered my inhibition, and I didn't care about if something I said was wrong, so I was just letting them have it. And it was a beautiful experience because they felt very connected, very understood, and I felt very in tune with them. I felt like I knew what they were thinking, and we all felt very connected in that way. And I do think it opened something up. And I did it again about 6 months after that. And then I had a very vicious experience with psilocybin mushrooms, and that is my fault. I took way too many, and it was not my intention, but it happened, and it kind of blew me wide open, but in a negative way. It was somewhat traumatizing. I was panicking most of the time. I was not having a great experience, but I noticed in that experience, in that 8 hours that I was going through all of that, yes, it felt like an eternity, and I thought I was turning into a vegetable. And a side note before I go any further, I highly recommend, if you do want to venture into the plant medicine world, that you use an anchor or someone you trust to be there with you. But also, there are people who can facilitate this type of experience for you in a healthy way and give you dosages and you can work with medicine people, shamans, people who practice this and do this professionally. That's the way I now practice this, and I highly recommend that if you are interested. So for me, I noticed in that mushroom trip, I don't even like to call it a trip, it's a journey. That's the term that we want to use, is a journey, because you're taking a journey. You're not tripping out, man. There's a reason for it. Well, there were things that came up for me, that came up in my consciousness. Issues with things in my very personal to me, sexual things that I had been through. There were things that the idea of killing myself, even, okay, suicide, which was something I had never even thought about or experienced up to that point, came up for me during that mushroom journey. And I remember not only was my reality completely warped, my hearing, I mean, you should have seen everything. It was absolutely nuts. So it was frightening to me because I thought I was never coming back from it, okay, until it started to wear off. And I was like, oh God, I wish I would have enjoyed that. Kind of like when I used to get on roller coasters as a kid and I'd keep my eyes closed the whole time. And then at the end, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm alive. Why did I keep my eyes open? Well, it was kind of like that. But there were a lot of things that came up. And I noticed that because that didn't happen the first two times. It was very much just like, here, have this experience. Ooh, all these ideas. You're inspired. Ooh, you're coming to all these conclusions about the universe and things. It was one of those typical types of psychedelic experiences. This was otherworldly and it was much stronger and it was much more intense. So even after that, I was so scared of being altered that I couldn't even, smoke weed with my friends. It was feeling different, weirded me out for a long period of time. And then, not about 6 months after that, I went through my first Kundalini awakening experience, which I thought at the time, once I realized it was Kundalini awakening, which took me a little bit of time to accept and get to, I thought, did that mushroom trip induce this? They say that psychedelics can induce this. Well, after working with several mediums, healers, things like that, I have come to the conclusion I was always going to have an awakening, but the mushrooms may have just been something that came along to kind of show me some things that may come up during my awakening that would need to be healed. And that's why I'm talking about this. Because mushrooms, they're intelligent psilocybin mushrooms. They may not be as mind-blowing and earth-shattering as ayahuasca or iboga, but the experience definitely revealed things in my consciousness and brought things up from my subconscious, I believe. And those were things that needed to be smoothed out, healed, worked on, moved through. And so I started doing that, especially after my Kundalini awakening, which I experienced completely sober. I didn't take anything during that time. I mean, I barely ate during that time. So that experience was frightening in and of itself, but I kind of already knew where to go. And so I did start seeing therapists and things like that because plant medicine it's not something you should just do on its own. There are other things you should incorporate in with it. And that's what's so healing about it, is that even though it does have the power to rewire and to create new neural pathways and to really move the brain, the physical brain, into different states and in permanent states even, it's complementary as well. It can be used to access what's next, what else needs to be healed, what other part of my consciousness is fractured or fragmented that needs healing, acceptance, love, and smoothing out. I like the term smoothing out because it's not something that's wrong or bad. It's something that we need to get the kink out of. Kind of like when a hose is um, bent the wrong way and the water won't come through. There's nothing wrong with the hose. There's nothing wrong with the water. We just need to move that out a little bit. Something got moved in a different way that isn't conducive to your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Let's just smooth it out a little bit. So those experiences I already had going into working with people and doing retreats and things like that. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about the two that is, I mean, a lot of people talk about peyote. There's a few of them that are out there that a lot of people talk about. DMT. And so there is a documentary, if you have not seen it, on Netflix, I believe. It's called DMT the Spirit Molecule. I recommend you watch that. It talks about DMT, dimethyl tryptamine. Oh, I probably got that wrong. Anyway, DMT is called the spirit molecule because it is the molecule or the substance that is secreted by the pineal gland, and our brain makes this. That's what really drew me to it as well, because I understood that our brain is a pharmacy. chemical known to man. And I understand how that's possible. And the pineal gland, I've always had a direct experience with that because my third eye opened when I was rather young, many years ago. So, and I've had experiences with the pulsing and the tingling and things like that. So I've had to accept in my life that all these weird things people are talking about, this pineal gland, this third eye thing, it's real. I'm having my own experience with this, and it's really interesting because the pineal gland, when it's daytime, makes serotonin, and that's what gets you up in the morning. And the pineal gland at nighttime, when the lights are low, makes melatonin. But another substance it makes is DMT. And DMT is the most powerful hallucinogenic, I don't like to say psychedelic, but hallucinogenic substance on Earth, if I'm not mistaken. And our brain makes that. So that made me feel comfortable about taking a substance that had DMT in it as well. And you'll see in that documentary, and I have been with people personally who have done or taken DMT in its chemical form or its purified form, and they had an incredible experience. It's not something I was drawn to. I was drawn to taking DMT as it came naturally in a plant form. But regardless, when monks are in really, really deep states of consciousness, or anyone is, but when you are in really deep states of meditation, when you have entered certain brainwave frequencies that will induce the pineal gland to start creating that substance, you start to have out of body experiences. You start to experience extremely altered states of consciousness that go beyond your natural just getting high or going on a little trip with the mushrooms. DMT is, I don't want to say it's where it's at, but that is the experience. One could say DMT is kind of the chemical expression of this spiritual thing or this spiritual phenomenon that's happening. You leaving your vessel or your vessel widening and becoming aware of more than what is here in this dimension and in this reality and in this lifetime even, that DMT goes there. So I'll talk a little bit about ayahuasca versus Iboga, and no, they kind of sound similar, but I don't think they were named after each other, although they are a perfect yin and yang in my opinion, although there are many different plant medicines out there, plant spirit medicines, that complement them, that may be similar and that aren't as talked about but are just as beneficial. But I'm talking about these just to illustrate a point, and because there's a lot of people out there that have heard of these things but want a little bit more clarity and are very interested in the whole healing side of plant medicine and really blowing themselves wide open and getting to the good stuff. And I highly recommend doing your own research, working with professionals to do that. And you don't have to go fly to South America to do it, okay? Just because Chelsea Handler did that doesn't mean you have to. There are people who can facilitate this for you in other places, and that might be more convenient to you. But I really want to illustrate the healing side of all of this because these two plants really take it a step further. Now, I've had my own experience with ayahuasca. I have not had my own experience with Iboga. So I will tell you what I've learned, what I've talked to people about in their experience, and I'll talk about my experience with ayahuasca. And I was very nervous about ayahuasca for several years. I tried to do ayahuasca a few years ago with a Native American church here in the United States that you have to belong to, and there's a whole intake form and everything, and the whole thing made me nervous, especially after my third experience with mushrooms. I was really going, maybe I should never again. But eventually, after realizing that I just took too much and I wasn't in the right setting, and I also brought so much stuff up at once, and that's just what's going to happen. And I've healed since then. I've continued to heal. I've done work on myself. I've done all types of different healing modalities. So a lot of that stuff has been smoothed out, especially my fear of that as well, because my fear is an ego fear of losing control. Okay, I got a lot of Leo in my chart. There is a definite fear of losing grip. And really, one of the best things about working with someone professionally and doing it with a medicine person at a retreat, who are doing it with you in that type of setting, is you feel so safe. And you have to feel safe when you are going to kind of come out of your body, or, and that sounds kind of scary, but just go to different parts of yourself that you're not familiar with, or you may not actually be ready for. Although I think you're ready for any experience that the plant spirit gives you, your ego might not think you're ready for it. So you need anchors, you need people there to support you, because it's a physical experience as well. It's very visceral. So the reason I did this, and I have done plant medicine, is I want to access different parts of my subconscious. I do know, because of my Kundalini awakening, many things that I'm experiencing in this lifetime are coming from other lives. They're coming from other times and places where my soul, my energy has expressed itself in ways that now need to be loved, nurtured, and healed. And that's something I want to do. I remember telling one of my mentors, I said, if I spend the rest of this life miserable and healing, maybe my future lives from a linear perspective won't have to do that work. And they said, well, that sounds really honorable of you, and you're not going to be miserable for the rest of your life. And they were right. But we go through things, there's ebbs and flows. But for me, I want to do the work. And I also love myself enough and understand the soul complex energy enough that I feel like I should do this for all of me, not just this ego version of me. So there's many reasons one could do this. I have been in plant medicine retreats with people who just wanted to have a fun experience, who just wanted to see what happened, okay? And they got more than what they bargained for, but it was good. Ultimately, they were grateful for it. They're so humbled by the experience as well. So I'll talk about my experience with some other plants as well. I have taken plants like Kanna, which you can buy Kanna tea at Whole Foods and Target, but this is a very different type of Kanna. This is given to you in its very strong form, in its natural state, the root, and that is a heart opening plant. I've done a lot of heart opening medicine, and I highly recommend that because opening the heart is a game changer, okay? And that's very different than having this psychedelic experience, but the different medicines will put you into different, your body, the mind, the heart, spirit. It's the four directions, and these different medicines will put you in different states of consciousness and in working with different parts of you. So I've done lots of different ones that were administered to me, and there's some that have just a little bit of effect that do this, and there's some that are just earth-shattering and mind-blowing, and so I've done kind of a wide array at this point, and I can definitely tell you that ayahuasca truly was the most significant and profound experience that I've had to date. I have heard that Iboga is even more so in certain ways, and I'll explain what I know to be the difference. So my experience with ayahuasca was exactly how they describe it. I don't think I had as much as you would have had if you went down to South America and you drank it right there after they made their little stew right off the bark and the vine. But my experience was still very, very profound, although it wasn't scary and it wasn't as visual as a lot of people describe ayahuasca to be. I've had more psychedelic experiences than I did when I did ayahuasca, but when I did ayahuasca, I could feel this energy taking me places in my consciousness, and I did not feel in control, but I also didn't feel scared. I felt, well, a lot of the time I didn't even realize that was what was happening, and it's interesting because ayahuasca is called the mother or the grandmother, the mother vine. There's different names for it, and they give it this feminine energy because plants will come in a masculine and feminine energy as well, and that just refers to the type of energy. Is it receptive? Is it dominating? Is it forthright? Is it direct? Is it indirect? All that sort of stuff. So ayahuasca is a very indirect energy. So I think there's benefits to both. And now that I've had my experience with ayahuasca, because I used to think, no, I just want to do Iboga. I want something direct. Well, maybe direct isn't always so good. And just like feminine energy, there's an indirectness. There's a follow the breadcrumbs. Come down this hallway with me. What I was experiencing was a lot of imagery in my mind's eye, because I'm very clairvoyant, and so I was being given a lot of imagery, but I could almost feel this rewiring or this reprogramming happening in the background. As soon as this as soon as I would be given these images to follow, I would start following them like, ooh, that's a funny looking thing. And it was very simple. It didn't mean anything. And then all these memories would start popping up over here. Your dad, this, that, and the other. I would start to smell things from my childhood. I would start to remember things that I had never thought about since I was a kid. And it was like a dream when you wake up and you go, oh, I lost it. I can't get it. I don't know the details of it anymore, and I don't know what it was that I remembered, but I know I was remembering things again because it was accessing that deep in my, if you want to go from just a psychological and physical perspective, that deep in my neural pathways and in my brain. Okay, it was really getting in there and it was doing something. And I had a very long experience, and it was very physically demanding as well. My body, I did not feel like myself. I was very out of it. It felt kind of similar to being shit-faced drunk, but and you feel like you just got off a roller coaster the whole time, so you're a little queasy. Your body is just going through a lot, and I'm a highly sensitive person, so I was going through it. But the experience was just so magical, and I would play music, and then I would turn it off and just lay there, and time seemed to lapse. I couldn't really keep track of how long something was or how short the time had been, and it definitely took me, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about where it took me, but to very specific places in my family line. And I knew that I wasn't doing this, and although my daddy stuff is stuff that I'm wanting to heal, I did not really take myself where it was taking me. And I felt like I was healing something for my entire ancestry and for my family who is still alive as well. I felt like the essence was that I was healing that for them. And that's the thing about ayahuasca, is that everyone's experience is a little different, but she leads you to conclusions. She gives you imagery that you're not really sure what to make of, and you're supposed to kind of put the pieces together on your own. And it's kind of like this, kind of like being in an argument with a woman, and you're trying to get to the point, and you're trying to, I just remember feeling like this is kind of why they call it a feminine energy, because of how playful, but also how indirect and not forthright the energy was. So I wasn't coming to conclusions directly. I was having to come to them after going through all these different experiences and these different things, which is valuable because she's almost letting you come to the conclusion yourself, okay? Which is sometimes even more valuable because it's you actually doing the work. And a lot of times the distractions she would give you, it felt like she was distracting you so that she could work on a neural pathway or a part of you without you looking. It was very interesting, and I felt that. And that was explained to me, and I had heard things about that before, but to have my own experience with it, I was like, that's what they mean by that. So it was very profound. It was somewhat recent, so I'm not going to say that I'm healed, I'm all better now. I do feel different, and there are specific things that came up during it that I think are now working themselves out and dropping in, as they say, because after you have one of these journeys or these psychedelic experiences or a plant medicine experience, you have little aha moments and little nuggets of healing that drop in later throughout the days after, the months after, the years after. There might be something that came up for me in that mushroom experience that was smoothed out during my ayahuasca experience, but then I won't see the fruits of that labor play out until later in life when I actually experience that type of love with somebody or that type of experience with my own child one day. You see what I mean? It's not just you wake up and you're like, I'm Jesus now. It's not like that. You're not totally healed, and that's not really the purpose of it. I could almost feel this grandmother vine knowing where to go and knowing how much to give me and knowing that there's more, but this is good for now. Okay? Now, on the other side of that is a plant called Iboga. And I've heard so much about this and done a lot of research, and this is a masculine energy. And I want you all to know about this because a lot of people are really drawn to ayahuasca when the experience they're looking for is Iboga. And although I thought the experience I was looking for was Iboga as well, and I do plan to do that one day, I got a lot out of my ayahuasca experience. So you need to go where your heart leads you, and you'll notice that you might have an opportunity where someone says, "Hey, I'm going to do ayahuasca. You should come do it with me." And that might be your cue to go, "Okay, maybe my ego thinks Iboga is better, but maybe my soul says this is what you need right now." Let your life unfold in that way and trust your guidance and trust that it will. But Iboga is very different than ayahuasca in that it is a masculine energy. So it's very direct. It's a much longer experience. I've heard it's much more intense, and I've seen, I've watched documentaries. I've been around people doing ayahuasca now who were having very intense experiences, where they almost were just not even in the same room with you, okay? I wasn't quite at that point, but that it can happen that way. That DMT, if it's really strong in you and you're reacting to it, or if that plant has yielded and said, "I'm going to allow you to be taken over in this way," I think you're safe, but it can be very scary to the ego as it's losing its grip because there's a lot of ego stuff that gets smoothed out in the process. But Iboga is very, not just direct, but somewhat in your face as well. I heard that it can really lay it all out there for you and say, "All right, here it is." You can kind of, if you want to, compare it to the moon in Saturn in astrology, the great disciplinarian, the father figure, the one who's hard on you, the one who wants you to do the work, the one that wants you to put the time in, be resilient, be structured, be disciplined. And then you have the moon, the mother figure. It doesn't always mean the male in the house, but the nurturing role, the nurturing part of yourself, the part of you that wants to be emotionally met and the needs to be met, and your subconscious part of you, your emotional reactions to things, those softer energies that are not direct, that are very that are unspoken and you're not conscious of always. That's very ayahuasca energy. So Iboga gives you a longer experience, much more intense in certain ways, because you're not always led down a path or shown an image. You're taken where it's supposed to go. And although ayahuasca did that for me, I would go places and I would feel like I'm going there and she's taking me, but we wouldn't stay there very long. We'd sit there and have a conversation. And in the experience, I was having a conversation with my father, quite a bit of it. And then we go over here and I hear Iboga is much more deeply rooted. And once you go there, you're staying there. If you're having a negative experience or if you're reliving a pain or a trauma, it really just gives it to you and gives it to you and gives it to you, which can sound scary. But for some people, there are people who like to jump out of planes or jump out of planes. Okay, so let's be very clear. Some people, that almost excites them to have an experience so dangerous or so raw and so in your face. Kind of weirds me out and kind of it makes me nervous, but at the same time I understand where they're coming from because it probably sounds like, "Ooh, we're gonna get in there and we're gonna rip this shit out even if it hurts, and we're not going to have to drag this thing out." Okay, I've met people who have experienced Iboga and they said that was their ultimate experience, and I can see that, but they also said it was one of their most vulnerable and most frightening experiences. Not like you're seeing a bunch of weird faces and you're in a clown house. It's not like some horror movie for them. It was just being totally all of your ego shit, all of your walls, all of your bullshit just ripped off, and you're just laying there like a raw being, reworked, being healed, and that hurts. So okay, I'm not going to go on too much about this because I've really kind of covered the bases and given you all something to munch on a little bit. So for those of you who would like to reach out to me or find out more about me, you can go to my website at www.christopherwithayMedium.com. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and you should, at the@astromedium, ASTRO medium. And if you want to book a reading with me, you can do that through my site. I am a psychic medium, an empath, and intuitive astrologer, and I love what I do. I am also an ascension and awakening facilitator. I can help you if you are experiencing a lot of ascension symptoms at this time. If you are going through a tough first beginning part of your awakening experience and your ascension process is getting too much to handle, I can help facilitate healing, how to work with these energies to open up more, and what might be happening to you. Take it from me, somebody who thought I was going to have to be on anti-anxiety medication and be institutionalized. Trust me, I've gone down the rabbit hole when you first start awakening and you're going through your ascension process. So I want to help you and I want to ease that because really I want to help you hold more light so you can be the light worker you came here to be. All right, everybody, it was such a pleasure talking with all of you. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And if you have any questions about plant medicine and things like that, again, you can reach out to me. I can help direct you to people who will assist you in that. Thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight on the Chronicles of Chiron, the Lion, the Witch, and the Healer. I will see you all next week here on Soulfire, Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a good night.